So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today to the inaugural workshop for Conscious Capitalism WP Chapter. I know we had a lot going against us being... Yeah. Thank you. So I know we had a lot going against us, being a Friday and 8 o'clock in the morning and after finals, but I appreciate everyone's participation who has come and joined us today. Today we have a great offering. We will be exploring the concepts of higher purpose, one of the core tenets within conscious capitalism. And we have here to discuss in depth a little more, we have Brian Mohr. He is the president of Conscious Capitalism Arizona chapter. We'll be kind of digging into the aspects and the processing on defining that higher purpose. And then also today we have Adam Goodman of Goodman's Interior Structures, who will be leading us in an interesting exercise and allowing you guys the opportunity with the situation provided to define what your higher purpose would be if you were put into his position. But before we get started, I want to thank Avnet. We have Tyler Dalala here as a representative from Avnet. They are our founding sponsor for this organization. They have allowed us to pretty much provide all these services and events for this semester. So none of this would have happened without their trust and support for this organization. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Brian.
Is this on? Yes. All right, great. Awesome. I'll stay back here. So first, I've got to say, as all of you probably know Jake, some of you likely better than others, I had the opportunity to meet Jake September or October of last year. He reached out, I think, after hearing a couple of podcasts, investigating the Conscious Capitalism book, and thought, hey, maybe this would be a really good idea to bring this movement and this philosophy and this decision-making framework to Arizona State University. Reached out to me, and myself and Scott McIntosh, who's not with us today. Scott is the founder and chairman of the Arizona chapter of Conscious Capitalism, which was started back in 2013. So we're in our 6th year. We were the 3rd chapter of the movement to have ever started. And when Jake reached out, we were just beyond thrilled that somebody at the collegiate level was very, very serious about bringing this to the collegiate level. And as we kind of joke around in a very positive way, how fitting for a philosophy like this to elevate business to what it can be as the greatest source to create change in the world, and align it with an institution that for the last 4 years has been ranked as the most innovative college university in the United States. It's just kind of a match made in heaven. And a huge thanks to Jake and his team and everybody that has been part of the momentum to drive this thing forward. So just huge, huge appreciation to Jake and everybody that's been supportive along with Jake to bring us to where we're at today. So thank you guys. And if there were a way for you to potentially fail a few classes here and not graduate in May, that's fair enough. And Tyler and Avnet, thank you once again. Obviously, we couldn't do this without their support, so thank you. Really appreciate it. So with that, one thing I want to share with you about Adam Goodman and myself is we are really, really big music fans. And oftentimes we will find ourselves attending some of the same concerts here in town as well as around the country. And what's interesting about some of the music that we like is there are no opening acts for these bands. These bands are big enough that they don't need any warm-up. Yet here I find myself today as the warm-up act for Adam Goodman. So it's somewhat unfamiliar territory for me, but I'm going to do my best to set the stage and grease the skids, if you will, so Adam can come up and actually do the real show. So you can tune out, you can eat. You don't have to pay attention to me whatsoever because I am indeed the warm-up act. So with that, we're here to talk about purpose. And I can't help but talk about purpose and not start with Milton Friedman. And I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that everybody in this room has at least heard of Milton Friedman, if not knows him quite well. And in September of 1970, Milton Friedman penned a very famous New York Times Magazine article. And in it was born this thing that has been referred to as the Friedman Doctrine. And the Friedman Doctrine simply stated, or as it is simply stated, is the only social responsibility a business has is to maximize shareholder value, period. As long as the business does that, everything else will take care of itself. And what's interesting is if we take a look back to September 1970 and where we're at today, I think an argument could be made in favor of that this statement has become the dominant narrative of the way businesses practice business, that the sole thing that they are, it's perhaps an overgeneralization, but most businesses today, especially those on Wall Street, are working to maximize shareholder value, and oftentimes at the expense of all of the other stakeholders that are involved in the business. And without going into too much detail around Friedman and the doctrine, the unintended consequence is this issue that businesses are plagued with today that Gallup refers to as the unengagement problem. And I don't know how often you guys have looked at charts similar to this or this exact chart, but the Gallup organization, starting back in 1996, began measuring the health of the global as well as the American workforce through a survey that they refer to as their Q12 survey. They call it the Q12 because it has 12 questions. And those 12 questions are all geared at understanding, are people, the employees who go into their businesses every day, are they truly connected to the businesses that they are working for, or are they not? And there's three classifications. There's those that are engaged, there are those that are not engaged, and there are those that are actively disengaged. The three different classifications. This particular chart only looks at the top and the bottom, which is those that are engaged and those that are actively disengaged. So if you look at the far numbers over to the right, 2018, you've got 34%, roughly a third of all employees going to work in the United States, this is the US, are the ones driving creativity, driving innovation, the ones who feel that sense of connection, that sense of purpose with the businesses that they represent. 13%, so roughly a tenth or so, are quite miserable. And oftentimes are the ones that, and for all of us who have had jobs, you know those people that are just constantly complaining and are only happy when they can bring you with them. Misery loves company. And so if you add those two numbers together, you've got roughly 47%, which means the other 53% of people who go to work every day are somewhere in between. They're sleepwalking through the day and doing just enough to get by, or some days they work really hard and other days they don't. And if only 34% of people feel that deep sense of connectivity to the businesses that they represent, and the rest of the 66% made up of the 13 who are actively disengaged and that other 53 that are somewhere in the middle, it's a huge opportunity. And when I think back to the Friedman Doctrine, to where we're at today, there have been so much innovation in business. We have explored so many aspects of what we can measure and manage. The innovations have been in information technology, in Lean, in Six Sigma. There's been so much of process improvement, process efficiency. The piece that seems to be the most often, I'll use ignored, is probably the piece that's the hardest to manage. And that's what's inside somebody's heart and soul. And yet the only, I would posit, the only competitive advantage a business has is its people. Everything else can be copied and duplicated eventually. And we'll talk about Southwest Airlines here in a minute or two, but their business model is out in the open. Everyone in the airline business could copy it if they wanted to, the model itself. Yet the thing that separates Southwest from every other airline isn't the model, it's the people. And it's what's inside their heart and soul. So clearly businesses like Southwest have been able to tap into something that very few businesses haven't been able to tap into. And that's what we believe is this notion around higher purpose. So we want to get into a little bit of a somewhat of an academic framework this morning before I turn it over to Adam of really three areas. How do you discover it? How do you articulate it? And then once you have articulated it, how do you really begin to integrate it or enculturate it into the business? Now, I want to throw out a disclaimer as well that a lot of what we're going to talk about today is geared around the idea that you are a business that's been in existence for some period of time. And I want to make that distinction because if every one of us in this room decided to go start a brand new business right now, and we were going to start, you know, whatever business, ABC Inc., we could start with a higher purpose in mind right out of the gate. And we could all align ourselves to that sense of higher purpose. Yet there are thousands of businesses that started not today, that have started years ago, who started perhaps with the mindset of the Friedman doctrine that, hey, as a business, we're going to create a product, we're going to create a service, it's going to be good, it's going to create value. But at the end of the day, our goal as a business is to maximize the value for the shareholders, the investors, or the owners. That's our sole goal. And if they've operated in that mindset through no fault of their own, because lots of businesses have, how do you make that shift from that more traditional approach to business to one that is far more modern, that's going to tap into the heart and soul of people so that we start moving these 13% as well as the other 53 that are stuck in the middle into this 34%. Because the true economic impact of roughly 2/3 of the US workforce being disengaged is estimated at about $600 billion. This is just a lot of lost productivity. So you're talking, you know, 2/3 of $1 trillion if we were just able to tap into what's inside all of us. So I want to, there's my start for you. So why does purpose actually matter? To me, this James Hollis quote captures it incredibly well. We are all meaning seeking, meaning creating creatures. And when we experience the loss of meaning, we suffer. There is something unique to the human DNA that what we do has to mean something, even the smallest of things, just our wiring. It's fighting, you know, evolution in human DNA. This is who we are. I can't comment on any of the other species on the planet. Maybe ants desire meaning too, for all I know. I don't know that to be the case, but we know as humans, we desire meaning. And when it's not there, we do suffer. So I don't know that we need to get into much more of why does it matter. It matters because it's what's unique to us as human beings. So how do you discover it? Conscious capitalism as a movement has been around for 10, 15 years or so. And yeah, please go ahead. No, not at all. It's an excellent question. So, and we could probably spend a lot of time exploring that by itself. I want to share with you at least one nugget of it, of an answer that I think will help. So the Gallup organization defines engaged with a particular phrase that to me says everything. So this group of folks right here that represent this green line, those folks experience a profound connection to the businesses that they represent. Now, there's a longer definition, but that particular phrase for me, profound connection. So I would ask all of you just to think in your life, the things that you are profoundly connected to. What are some of the ingredients that make up the recipe of profound connection? There's likely a deep amount of love, a deep amount of care, a deep amount of commitment, compassion. It begins to get at the best of our human qualities. So to be profoundly connected, certain requirements or conditions must exist. And so your question is an excellent one. Well, whose responsibility is it to create those conditions? I do believe leadership in business absolutely has a responsibility, because as I think we might all agree, I certainly do, that if the leaders aren't leading in a way to create those conditions, it's virtually impossible for it to emerge from anywhere else inside the organization and have any level of long-term sustainability. So the organization, which I'll call the leaders, they are really the spear of the organization, the tip of the organization. Yet you're absolutely right. We as individuals also have a responsibility. We can't just point our fingers at Adam and say, oh, Adam, you haven't given me a sense of purpose. This is your fault. No, part of it is my responsibility as an individual for me to understand, well, what am I profoundly connected to? Have I done my individual work to know where do I want to make a contribution? What sense of meaning will fill me up? Do I want to work for an organization that is making these shares? Is this going to fill me up? I don't know. I thought about it, but and maybe a crude example, but an example nonetheless. So I think it's a long story short, both parties are responsible, but I do believe that the leadership, as it relates to the Gallup, bear a little bit more of the responsibility because they have so many lives that are coming into their businesses to work for them on a day in, day out basis. Hopefully that's enough of an answer for now. All right. So as I shared, this notion of discovering higher purpose, as we're going to go through, which is really a beautiful setup for the Goodman's interior structure story, is an organization that has been around for 6+ decades. And this is a business that started years ago and started under a more traditional business mindset or mind frame, and has made and is making, likely, I don't think it's ever done, this shift towards a more purpose-driven environment. So if you're one of those businesses, how do you discover your purpose? Well, there's a number of different ways, and the Conscious Capitalism Best Practices separates it into a few of these different ways that you can go through the discovery process. And at each of your tables, there is a handout with all 7 of these on there. And within each of the 7 are some sample questions that come right out of the Conscious Capitalism Field Guide, which is the follow-up book to the original Conscious Capitalism book. That is really a book to help business leaders implement the principles of conscious capitalism inside their organization. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but just know that there are a number of different ways to begin to unearth, okay, what is it that our business really does stand for? The one that I do want to share just as a quick example is this idea of think difference, not different. And this is where Southwest Airlines comes back into play. When Herb Kelleher and the team started the airline, one of the things that really separated them from all the other airlines was the low fares, the no frills, and just the volume of short distance flights that were made available in the state of Texas. And over time, they continued to talk about that as what made them different. Yet, as they began to grow, what they realized, with the help of a gentleman named Roy Spence, who is the founder of an ad agency called GSD&M, which is not necessarily important, an amazing guy. I'd encourage you to look him up. Google him. His name is Roy Spence, one of the most charismatic speakers you'll ever have the chance to see. He did some work with Herb and the Southwest team, and they began talking to some of Southwest customers and wanted to find out, well, what is it that Southwest is really doing? What is it that these low fares, no frills, tons of options, like what is it really giving people? What's the real difference that Southwest is making? And what they found is it was giving people the freedom to go see the people that they needed to see, whether it was business trips, whether it was family trips, or whether it was pleasure trips. And over time, what Herb and the Southwest team realized is, well, what made them different and having low fares and no frills and tons of options, while that was different than the other airlines, that wasn't the difference they were making. The difference they were making is they were giving people the freedom to fly. And that, as subtle as it may sound, to this day is their purpose. and they've integrated that into everything they do. And that whole sense of freedom is what Southwest stands for. And the way they bring that to life, I'm going to guess every one of you have been on a Southwest flight and have had your Southwest experiences, if not many of them. And this is integrated into everything they do. It is all about freedom from having to pay baggage fees, freedom from the flight attendants having to conform to some particular mold. They all get to be free to be themselves. And there's just countless examples of what they do. Purpose tends to fall into 4 different types. Let me just go through them real quick. The good, the true, the beautiful, and the heroic. And it is not required that an organization's purpose fall into one of these, but these tend to be, this is the operating framework that most purpose statements fall into, and most organizations' higher purposes fall into. You can see the examples here. The Container Store, get organized, be happy. Wikipedia, knowledge belongs to all of us. Disney, to use our imagination to bring happiness to millions. And Grameen Bank, a bank for the poor. The good, service to others. The true, furthering knowledge and discovery. The beautiful, excellence, creating excellence and beauty. And then the heroic, the courage to do what is right to improve the world. So these are the 4 different buckets or categories that most purpose statements and organizational purposes fall into. How do you articulate it? As you go through the discovery process and figure out which one of the 4 potentially it falls into, I think there's 3 primary suggestions of how to articulate purpose. Number 1 is be very focused. Number 2 is keep it very simple. And number 3 is aim high, but not so high that there's just, it's completely unimaginable, that people can't see a vision of the future that they live into pursuing that purpose. So keep it simple, stay focused, and aim high. Quick example, anyone know Nike's tagline? Just do it. Oftentimes that might get confused with their purpose. That is indeed not their purpose. That is their tagline. It's a marketing ploy. Does anyone know Nike's purpose by chance? So that gives you a little taste of what you're in store for here in about 5 minutes. So Nike's purpose is to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. And their fundamental belief is if you have a body, you are an athlete, which is very different than just do it. The thing about purpose is it does not need to be, I'm not surprised nobody knew it. It's not an external rallying cry. It's an internal rallying cry. It's a way for the people who come in every day to enroll their skills, their passions, their talents to the organization, for them to coalesce around something that's meaningful for the organization. So this is a quick example of the simplicity, the focus, and aiming high for Nike. Enculturating purpose, this is where I think you guys are going to have, if I'm not mistaken, Jake, a good chunk of the time spent with Adam today is, you know, okay, once you've discovered it and you've gone through one or more of these steps to identify what it is, you've come up with the relatively short, focused, and aiming high statement. All right, well, how do you then begin to really bring it into an organization? And there's a variety of ways to do that. Here are a few examples: an internal campaign, a letter from the leader, and some sort of a video. Utilize purpose-inspired nomenclature. Ensure that your talent attraction, talent development, and talent retention mechanisms are aligned. Of course, all of your employee evaluation, recognition, and compensation, as well as celebratory and recognition events, are aligned to it. And obviously, if you're starting from a place where you need a massive initiative overhaul, you can do that as well. Quick example of using purpose-inspired nomenclature, using Southwest again as the example. They refer to their employees, so think of this whole freedom thing, they refer to their employees as freedom fighters. Their benefits, they don't call them employee benefits, they call them employee freedoms. When Southwest chooses to move into a new market, a market that they've never existed in before, they refer to moving to a new market as liberating the market. So all around this idea of freedom. So it really becomes part of the DNA of the organization. And you guys can probably begin to let your minds wander of what some of these other examples look like. We're not going to go through all of them. With that being said, that's your warm-up act. Hopefully it was somewhat entertaining and somewhat educational. I've known Adam for probably 18, 19 years. I met him back at the end of the 1990s, beginning of the century, which is weird to say. And I knew Goodman's before Goodman's was what it is today, which is a really cool thing to have experienced, although I've known Goodman's far better as who they are today, as a result of a relationship with Adam, a friendship with Adam, traveling around the country to see crazy bands with Adam. But most of all, doing what I can to highlight Adam and Goodman's as an organization that is headquartered here in Phoenix, has a location in Tucson and one in Albuquerque, that I use as the perfect example of a business that has been around for decades, that operated under a traditional mindset, is on its way and has successfully made the transition and will likely always be in transition to leading with purpose. And it takes a special kind of an individual, a special leadership team. It's never one person, to believe in the potential of the human spirit and bring it to life. And in a business that sells tables and chairs and file cabinets and office furniture, to lead a purpose-driven existence and be just a shining example of what is possible. I love talking about Adam and the Goodman story. So you guys are in for a real treat this morning. So without further ado, Adam Goodman from Goodman's Interior Structures. Or maybe Jake was supposed to introduce him. I'm sorry.
I think he's a little upset that I made him the opening act, so he wants to steal my position. So I mean, I honestly, but it worked out because I couldn't have done a more perfect opening for Adam. I just want to kind of set up what this exercise is. So this really is the meat of this workshop, and these will always be the meat of any workshop. It's giving you guys the opportunity to hear the story and hear the setup of real world leaders, business leaders, real world situations that they're dealing with. And then we're going to pass the buck to you guys. So Adam is going to present his story. I want you guys to keep in mind what you will be placed in his shoes afterwards. You, as teams at tables, will define a higher purpose. You will identify how do you take a very profit-centric, commodities-based organization and then move it into that next realm on higher purpose-driven. So as Brian mentioned, there are sheets on the table to give some suggestion questions. After Adam is done with his initial setup, we'll open it up to about maybe 15 minutes of Q&A. So any questions you have, feel free to shoot at him. See if you could stump the chump. I don't know. We'll see. But without further ado, Adam Goodman.
Good morning, y'all. So I'm going to try to take this and put it on the fly. The idea that Brian is warming up for me to continue the band metaphor. It's like the Beatles are opening for I don't know, some sort of mid-level mediocre band like Maroon 5. I'm the Maroon 5. I mean, they're not bad. They're fine. But this dude's the Beatles. All right. So we're on. So like Jake said, I'm going to take you through the journey up into the point where we discover our own purpose and then implement it. And I've actually never seen this worksheet before in my life. In fact, honestly, first time I saw it was last night. And I thought Jake put it together. I'm like, wow, that was really impressive. That's a pretty good list there. And then I learned this morning from Brian as part of this field guide, evidently. But if you're paying careful attention, what you'll notice as I'm talking is I'm almost going to check off all these boxes on how we discovered our purpose, which is kind of cool. So pay close attention. So Goodman's was founded in 1954. There it is, right there. It's our original location on Grand Avenue. It was founded in 1954. My grandfather moved out from Philadelphia to Phoenix. He bought a truckload of surplus military furniture and brought it out here, sold a truckload, got enough money to buy another truckload, sold another truckload, rinse and repeat all the way up until today. And my father and my uncle bought my grandfather out in the 60s, and then they took the business to another level. I think we have another. Oh no, we don't. Nope. Okay. So as Phoenix is growing up and exploding in population, Goodman's grew right along with it. We had a contract with the state of Arizona, the only furniture supplier in the state of Arizona with a contract. And you think about this for a second. And so as every city hall is being built and every school is being built and every hospital and courthouse and prison and all that stuff, that's us riding that wave all the way up. That's really a pretty profound opportunity. And we got some just giant customers, and we opened an office in Albuquerque and in Tucson and Los Alamos. When Los Alamos was when Reagan was in office, and Los Alamos is planning for Star Wars, that missile defense system thing. They were buying a lot of furniture at the time, like just millions of dollars at a time to help their what they're trying to do. Motorola, as their biggest employer in the state, they're exploding. They're going all over the country, and we're sending the furniture. University of Phoenix, as they're exploding, we're going all over the country with them. And so what this allowed us to do is to get some really great talent, to attract some really, really quality talent back in the 70s, 80s, maybe even the early 90s. And my story is I would work in the family business every summer break, every spring break, every winter break. And the one thing that I was certain of was that I didn't want to be in this business. And because it was a lot like just selling stuff, and that didn't really speak to any kind of more meaningful work to me. I couldn't have articulated it like that at the time. What I knew I wanted to do was be a newspaper publisher, which sounds kind of quaint and charming now, but it used to be a really cool job. Actually, I think it's still a really cool job. And my heroes are newspaper journalists. I could go off on another hour-long tangent about about why print journalism is so important to our democracy, and how aggravated I get when the media gets lumped in together in one big mess. And it's really the broadcast journalists that are those guys are bozos who are the fake news, and the print journalists, by and large, with exceptions, are the ones who are really driving democracy forward and holding leaders accountable. Am I off on a tangent here? So I went to work for Gannett Newspapers. I'm going around the country in this leadership program to become a newspaper publisher someday, and pretty excited about it. My father, I came back for Thanksgiving one year, and he sits me down to have the talk. Not the birds and the bees talk. It was earlier. And he says, look, if you ever want to know what it's like to own your own business, now's the time to do it. And he pointed to my older brother, who was 7 years older in a corporate job. He said, it's too late. He's gone too high up the corporate ladder to take the step down in his career, and you're right at the spot. You can do it now. And he said these prophetic words, well, you can always go back to newspapers. I know, pretty funny. So I did. I came back into the family business in the early mid-90s, I guess, and learned the business and got involved in it. And it's interesting and challenging, and there's an element of fun and all that. That's great, but there was something still missing. And reflecting back on newspapers, and just to go back to that tangent one more time, what drives me about newspapers, what's so interesting to me is how they still to this day, they set the agenda for the community. They make an impact. They are change agents. There are bills in the legislature right now here in Arizona that are only there because the Arizona Republic pointed out in a 5-part series just 2 months ago 3 months ago about charter school reform, the need for charter school reform. That was on nobody's radar. And now there's bills and legislators that are going to deal with it. That's powerful stuff. That's what I like being a part of. So, but here I am in the business selling, file cabinets and doing that thing, and pining for the days of being in the newspaper. Around late 90s, early 2000s, I start to realize, all right, this is my career. And I look at all this talent my father was able to attract with all these large contracts and everything. And I think to myself, oh, geez, these people are all going to get old and die that are all around me, these great people. And the burden is going to fall on me to attract that same kind. Where am I going to find this kind of talent? Oh, my goodness, I've got myself a problem here. And so that I'm starting to wrestle with right around the turn of the century, as Brian calls it. And so I was really thinking about that a lot. I had a conversation at a cocktail party once that resonated with me. And I'm telling you, this conversation didn't last more than 5 minutes, but it's the CEO of Herman Miller, our primary supplier, who said to me, people, employees, want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. That sentence right there. Well, I don't know what that means, but I get that there's something pretty important in that statement. And so I just chewed on that for a while. And then I did something, I don't know why I did it. I like to think in the mythology of Goodman's that it was an instinctual response, but I probably read it in like Inc. magazine or something stupid like that. But it turns out it's here on our worksheet here of discovering your higher purpose. I spent a year talking to most of our large customers, and that same year talking to all of our employees. And I asked just one question of each group. I asked the customers, why do you do business with us? And I asked the employees, why do you work here? And I took notes. And I consciously did not filter the notes. I didn't try to edit the notes. I just verbatim what they said. And I didn't even know what I was going to do with it. And I filled up a couple legal pads. And at the end of the year, I went to a workshop in Orlando, Florida, called Leadership Challenge, based on the book Leadership Challenge, actually, which I really recommend. I really recommend. And I got inspired. So there's a lot of talk in that workshop about what your purpose of a company is. So I spent my flight back from Orlando, which, if you're familiar with geography, it's a long flight. So I had a lot of time. And because I carried these legal pads with me, and I pulled them all out, and I read through everyone, just read through, and tried to distill what was in there. Now, I was telling Jake earlier, I don't have those legal pads anymore. I didn't realize this would become, they were just a bunch of scribbled papers, so I didn't save them. But my memory of what people talked about in there, the customers talked about how what we, Goodman's, what we do for them helps them to accomplish their purpose. Oh, really? Tell me more about that. Well, universities, ASU says what you do for us helps us to help students to learn. Like, oh, that's interesting. We actually, around that time, we did a study with Estrella Mountain Community College. They asked us to come in and do a pre-study and a post-study, right? Before we came in and did their offices, and then after we came in and did their offices. And we interviewed students and faculty and administrators, all about learning outcomes, the quality of learning outcomes. And the baseline scores jumped up dramatically after we came in and redid the classrooms for them. Like, clearly we were making an impact on student learning. And so that's the kind of thing that the higher ed customers were telling us. Okay, I get that. We do a lot of healthcare business as well. And our healthcare customers were telling us that that what we're doing is making patients more comfortable and making families more comfortable. It's helping the patients to heal. Oh, it's making the caregivers, the nurses and doctors, safer, right? Helping prevent injury. And and that's helping patients to heal, which is pretty darn profound, right? And so I chewed on that a little bit. We talked about, remember this, a recliner in a patient room, right? Which is where a patient can ambulate to help them recover. Those, for some reason, oh, this is a good public service announcement for me right here. If you're ever, God forbid, in a hospital, don't don't jump on that recliner on the extended foot thing in the recliner. Don't stuff towels down there and then try to jam it closed like that. That breaks them. They're not indestructible, and these things get a lot of abuse in hospitals. And so we're constantly having to go out and fix what you do to them. So if there's one thing you take away from today, be kind to your recliners in hospitals. And so and what they talked about is when that recliner is down, that patient room is down, and A, the hospital's losing money, but B, that's preventing someone from helping them to heal. And what they appreciate about us is we understand that, and we treat those like stat, to use a healthcare term. We get out there right away, we get out and fix it, and they really appreciated the fact that we take that so seriously, and that helps the patient to heal. Okay, well, that's good. We talked to our government customers. All right, as I said, we did a lot of government work, and our government customers talked about the fact that, look, we bought furniture from you in the 70s. Right, at that point, it had been 20-something years old, and you Goodman's come out and instead of selling us new furniture when we need a move or change or something like that, you teach us how to take what we have already and reuse it to minimize the amount of new furniture we have to purchase. You are literally reducing the cost of government for taxpayers. Wow, well, that's cool to think about. Okay, and when I talk to our teams, they take a whole bunch of pride in the fact that that we can minimize that new furniture purchase and just keep reusing. Okay, well, that's pretty cool. Then there's the fourth category of our customers. So if you're scoring at home, that's we talked about healthcare, higher ed, government, and now we'll talk about corporate customers. And the corporate customers is kind of a big, broad category, but what they essentially told us is you're making us more competitive. What we're trying to do is, whatever their particular objective is, we're trying to increase collaboration among our teams, then you're helping us do that. You're trying to increase innovation, then you're helping us to do that. If you're trying to make us more competitive, leaner costs, like whatever it is we're trying to accomplish, we look to you to help set us up to do that. It's one thing to send a memo out to everybody in the company and say, we need to collaborate more. And it's a whole nother thing to rearrange your physical environment to send the message that, yeah, we want you to get together and collaborate more. So we are helping them. Okay, well, that's all cool. So that's the customer side of the equation. On the employee side of the equation, they talked a lot about the family feeling and the team feeling and commitment to each other. They talked about the philanthropic things the company does and their pride in the philanthropic things the company does. And okay, I mean, I think that was the general gist of those, the thrust of those comments. So the one final thing I want to say before I turn it over to you all is one thing about the culture of the company. And this is, I had to really kind of take myself back to think about what this was like. And we were a really flat company. There were essentially 3 managers who had about, I don't know, 250 reports among the 3. You think about that for a second. Our CFO probably had 100 direct reports. People whose names he probably didn't even know, couldn't remember them. It was a really flat organization. And so there was really no advocate for employees who felt marginalized or disrespected. Those people would just kind of leave, right? And no one would ever know. And so we had the turnover problem in certain positions that were important. At the same time, we had some superstars. We had a bunch of superstars. And those are the salespeople in particular who were making $300,000, $400,000 a year. Now back then, that's today's dollars, that's like $25 million or something. I don't know what that is. Someone do the math on that. And so, and we had such a priority on expense reduction that there wasn't a whole lot of reinvestment in people at the time. And so the ones that we got to stay is really primarily because of money. And so, take you back to a young Adam Goodman back in those days, full head of hair, vim and vigor in my step. And I'm looking at this situation. I'm looking at the company. I'm watching the aging employees, the superstars, and I've just been told by the CEO of Miller that people want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And I go to this leadership challenge workshop in Orlando. I've got to define a higher purpose. And now it's your turn to figure out what that higher purpose. How great was that transition, by the way?
You know what? I had my doubts. So, as we stated before, now you heard his initial pitch, his initial setup, but we give you guys the opportunity to ask whatever questions you want. We'll give about 10 minutes for questions. So let's just start it up. Oh, all right. Okay.
I don't need the mic.
Oh, you do. It's recording.
Oh, just kidding.
What did you say?
Hello, my name is
Hello.
Caitlin. Thank you
Hello,
for joining us
Caitlin.
today.
Thank you for having me.
My question for you is regarding kind of loss of talent or potential loss of talent. What at the time, what were other companies doing like that you were losing the talent to, or maybe what were ones that you were thinking about as potential opportunities to lose those people that you were trying to attract?
Okay, great question. I can talk specifically about designers because that's a specific skill set. You get they're degree designers. Customer service people who are so important to us, they were being lost to the wind. I mean, like they were going to all kinds of different companies. Our design staff was taking jobs at architectural firms, which gave them an opportunity to do. Let me put it this way: if you're a designer at Goodman's, you're really focused on furniture and you're really good at furniture. When you move to an architectural firm, now you got the entire interior you get to play with to help create an environment, the ceiling, the lighting, the flooring, the walls, and the furniture. And so that's a coveted kind of job. So I would say it's just it's a dynamic that still exists today, right? That's still a risk. So does that answer? Is that good?
Next question.
You had mentioned that the employees enjoyed the philanthropy that the company was already doing.
Mhm.
How did that philanthropy start? I guess what was the motivator that made that? If I know that might have been a while ago when it first came in.
I think we'll give my father and grandfather credit for having a philanthropic heart and for causes that were important to them. I think is probably I'm sure it's the answer. There's no other answer. I mean, that is who they were. That's how they raised me to be. I just was recounting a story. I remembered when I was 10, I won I was at the Jewish Community Center and they had a raffle. And I won the raffle. I won $100 in this raffle. Like, this is unbelievable. Today, that's worth $40 million, right? And I'm like, I'm going to get a boat. I'm going to get all the things I'm going to spend on it. And my dad said, the right thing to do is to give it back to the. What? To give it back? Are you kidding me? And so, but there you go. That shows who he was. Is he's alive? I did give it back. I told them, they asked what they should buy with it. And I said, basketballs. You need more basketballs in the gym. And I still to this day, honestly, if I go into the Jewish Community Center, I see basketballs, I'm like, that's probably one of mine. Like, what does a basketball cost? I don't know. Like I thought about like 30 basketballs for this $100.
My question is this. So during the course of your presentation, you mentioned how when you looked at the shoes you were going to fit in, you almost, you knew this wasn't what you wanted to do. You wanted to disappear. Obviously, you stayed. What changed? What made you stay?
I think it's this conversation we're having right now. It's being able to identify a purpose for the company that resonated with my personal purpose. I think I know that's what it was, to align the two things. That's a hint as to where we took this. Nice question.
Don't give away the answers to the test. Any other questions?
Caitlin. Again.
One second.
Thank you. So in your organization at this time with roughly, 250, 300 people, how many of those were either directly client interacting or at some level were interacting with those end users who had their purposes fulfilled?
Wow. I'd say a good 130 of those people were probably technicians, installers so that's frontline labor putting the stuff together. So they're interacting with the client if you count that. And then after that, I would say, so of the say 300 at peak, but let's call it 230 of them, let's say. So a great deal at some point we're touching the customer with either correspondence or face-to-face or turning a wrench. This is awesome. Someone over this table asked a question too. Does it make him run back?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Dustin. Thanks for being here. So I think our friend Jake introduced you as being from Goodman's interior structures,
Yeah.
but the sign behind you says Goodman's office furnishings. I'm curious about when that name change happened, and if this isn't an industry that I know much about. So can you explain the difference?
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's a great question. In the early 2000s, right around the time of this whole purpose epiphany, there's a trend going on in our industry towards prefabricated construction. And so the drywall that we're sitting around here, for example, instead of, this is all, think of it as manufactured on the site by guys slapping up the drywall, putting the mud on the paint, the cove base, all that. Pre-manufactured construction means all that work happens in a factory where the quality is controlled, the cost is controlled, and it comes and just stands up on site. It's a way better way to build a building. And so we were moving that way. This floor that we're standing on is a raised access floor. You can see the air vents in the floor there. There's power that's distributed to the floor. If ASU wants to repurpose this space, it's easy. They pick up these carpet tiles, they move the floors, they move the electrical around, it's done. There's no getting in the ceiling and the whole thing. So it's a way smarter way to build a building. So as we moved into that product set, we changed our name to Goodman's Interior Structures. Thanks for asking.
What does it say on my timer? I forgot my phone up here.
6:38.
Okay. All right. Any more questions? Awesome. Oh gosh.
It's great.
Oh my goodness, Caitlin, you can. That's what is conspiracy.
So as you were talking about kind of the prefab and the installation, is that something then that your company took over, and for those designers, for example, would be able to design more for the furniture? Or
Caitlin, excellent question. Yeah, exactly. It gave them a bigger product set to be able to play with. Yeah, great question.
Anyone over there want to ask another one?
Uh-oh.
Well, okay. All right.
Brian Mohr,
Yeah,
Adam.
right.
I'm curious, given that the organization, privately held, family owned, how much of the family aspect and being private, how much room does that give you as a leader in the organization, as a leadership team, to make decisions that perhaps those in the public eye who are facing quarterly pressures, and what kind of room does that give you to make decisions perhaps different than a public company CEO?
My God, it's immense. I mean, look, we're celebrating our 65th year this year, and our time horizon, just by nature, is not quarters. It's not years. It's decades. I mean, we really think of that kind of long-term perspective. That couldn't possibly happen if we're facing the demands of a quarterly earnings. We're okay having a bad quarter here and there. Like, no, that's fine. So it's immense, the change. Thanks for asking that. Yeah. And by the way, it's Celine Dion next month, right?
Hello, my name's Elvis Diaz. My question is, kind of as you were talking about, you were more of a flat structure. Like, what was the learning and development or training and development or professional development that you guys offered? Specifically, if it's very flat, which is, I think, is great in one way, but then there's like no upward mobility, or how do people feel like they're moving up or learning more? So I was kind of curious to see kind of what you could share about that.
I mean, look, we famously had a sink or swim, you know, here, congratulations, here's your new job, here's your desk, which was a great desk, by the way, and go, right? And I'm exaggerating, obviously. There had to be some sort of training skills, but it was pretty truncated. And in terms of growth and development, there were supervisors that were periodically, you know, someone would rise to the top and become a supervisor, but they were, the reporting structure was still up to the top 3 people. My father, our CFO, and the design director, actually, she had a big chunk as well. And so there wasn't a lot of that, a lot of attention paid to developing people. Sorry to say.
Hi, Adam. I'm Joe. I'm Caitlin's dad.
Oh,
Just in for the weekend.
Very proud of Caitlin.
I just want to say, A, very proud of you, and B, very exciting to be in this kind of meeting and conscious capitalism and just hear all this. It's really encouraging for the next gen as our industry faces the same kind of age transition that you're talking about. My question is, today, roughly, how many locations and how many employees do you have?
So the recession hit us hard, Joe. What industry are you in, by the way?
Airport industry.
Airport. Very obscure.
It is hard too.
Yeah, it is. You're right. Yes. So we shrunk in half, actually, in the recession, and at that time we're 250 and went to 125, and we're now at about 160. And I should add, our revenues have now surpassed what the peak was before the recession. So that's a good thing. Was that your? Oh yeah, locations. Phoenix, Tucson, Albuquerque still. Yeah, Phoenix, Tucson, and Albuquerque. That hasn't changed. Our primary supplier, Herm Miller, we have contract with them that says where we can trade, and that's the box we're in, and there's plenty of opportunity here. No ambition for other locations. Uh-oh.
Hi, Adam. Matt Altman. Really happy that you're part of this with Conscious Capitalism and ASU. So I really applaud what you did in asking the questions to your customers and then the questions to your employees. So my question to you then is, in that whole question and answer scenario for you, what was that one core competency that you maybe can like distill or came away with for your company?
Great question. Great question. And I'll stall a second by saying, so Matt owns Sportique apparel company. I'm a huge fan of your clothes. And so when you go and do this and write down, I'm a customer. You come talk to me, and I can tell you why I like your clothes so much. And the answer essentially is it's so damn soft. Okay. Does that answer your question? The one core competency. I guess the answer is, as opposed to selling office furniture, we're creating environments. That's what became clear. Is we're creating environments. Now, remember, we're not doing it in the way that an architectural firm does it, in the ceiling plan and the lighting and the flooring and all that. But there is we're setting the stage. We're communicating to everybody who walks into the space exactly what something very intentional, right? So we did the furniture here in this building, and there is purpose behind every single piece of furniture and why it was selected and what it's meant to convey and how it's meant to make you feel when you walk through here. And so that is what became clear, is that we were good at that.
We have time for 2 more questions.
So kind of following up on that one, you said that when you had those conversations with your best customers, the feedback you received was that the value you offered them was helping them do their work better and helping improve people's lives. I'm curious about whether that was, at the time, part of the conversation you were also having internally with your employees about this is what we do. Thank you.
Dustin, it was about it's about how much more can we sell. I mean, it was about what did we do last month, and can we beat it next month? I don't mean to. That's an unflattering way to paint the company, but I think the purpose. We had a purpose statement at the time, and I went and looked it up, and I think I wrote it down here. Nope, I didn't. It was like to be better to our customers, to be better to ourselves, and to be financially strong. That's what it was. Now, that was the typical, it was written on a wall. We never really talked about what that meant. It was just sort of, well, that makes sense to everybody. And so that, no, the question was all about, let's sell more. Yeah. My dad's not going to watch this, is he? He's an amazing man. And is this the camera right here?
Yeah.
A terrific leader. I love him dearly. Okay.
All right, final question.
First, does anyone else want to go? I've done a lot. No, okay. All right. Next step, like for the next steps of this workshop, was we put together kind of a plan to integrate this into your culture. Just curious, the client interactions that you had when you did these interviews, how likely were they to then come back and potentially do testimonials in front of your larger employee set?
Well, that's a really great question. I don't think it ever happened. I can't think of it ever happening. Yeah, no, I don't think it ever happened. The way we work is, each customer is associated with a team of people. So call it 8, 9, 10 people. And they're very strong bonds between the customer and our team, but this team and this team don't really know each other's customers, and there's no real connection, or at least there weren't at the time. I'd say we're a little bit better than that now.
All right, thank you everyone for your questions. Looks like I expect to have very well-informed examples of higher purpose. So at this time, tables, you guys are on teams. Work amongst each other. You guys are going to have 20 minutes. So at 9:30, we'll reconvene. So really what we're asking to do is to define so discover your purpose, put it in some sort of articulated form, and then create kind of a general roadmap on how you would implement it and enculturate it within your business. All right. So work amongst each other. Feel free to please get seconds, thirds, fourths. I don't care. There's so much food back there, and I'll see you guys back in 9:30.
Thanks for the question. Those are great questions.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if we could start bringing it back together. 2 more minutes. All right. Wordsmithing. Okay, well, maybe I'll strategically ask for volunteers to come up. So basically, everyone's got an opportunity to define a higher purpose and kind of a generalized roadmap. What I'd like is for a representative from each team to come up here to the stage, no pressure, and to give your pitch. Give your pitch to Adam about what you would have done in his shoes. And he's going to give you feedback, and it's going to be fun. All right? So who would like to start? You guys are killing me. Okay. All right. I'm timing it 2 more minutes, and that's it. All right. I'm laying down my foot on that. All right. That was 2 minutes. Okay. No excuses now. Who wants to volunteer? All right. Ryan.
Oh, I'm not saying that.
Here's this. There's a negotiation process.
All right, so to start with the purpose that our team came up with, we thought that Goodman's purpose could be to empower their customers to do better and dream bigger by creating safe, comfortable, and organized spaces. You can clap, please clap. So as part of rolling out this purpose, we thought that Adam should share his journey on finding a purpose for the company, create a middle management kind of chain of command, So identify some leaders and then give the employees a champion in the company that can, I guess, help them develop their own skills and be a connection between them and upper management. We wanted to form a leadership and development team, invest in the professional development of your employees. And then we wanted this new leadership team to take the groups to the customers and have an offsite visit so that they could really get a better idea of the real impact that Goodman's was having. Some of the stories that you shared from the customers, we think that letting all of the employees see that firsthand would really help them feel a part of the new purpose. Anything else the team wanted to add? Yeah. There's some employees that just the nature of the work never. So when they see the report back or your stories of what I read, network, like it gives their work meaning. Oh wow, this one task that I thought was like annoying and tedious actually had an impact. So him just hearing sort of kind of and then being able to come back and share those stories with the rest of the greater team would kind of deepen that connection with the customer. You want me to react to all this? Yes, please. Any feedback?
I can't retain all of what you said, but it was great. That idea about taking the teams out to the customer to hear the stories firsthand is a way better idea than what we actually did. Nice work. Instead, I just kept repeating them around the company. I shouldn't be leading the.
Don't give away the
Yeah,
instant test,
right.
Like, you know,
React to that.
just react.
How do I do that without?
The merits.
Okay, well, I won't remember that for sure. But anyway, the purpose. I don't remember what you said. It was hard. Yeah, say it one more time. The purpose.
Empower customers
Yeah.
to do better and dream bigger by creating safe, peaceful, and
Yeah.
organized.
Oh, that's great. That's really good. It's wrong. Yeah. I had a plane flight. You're right. Okay.
Next volunteer, please. Anyone? Bueller. Come on, Sawyer. You know you're coming up. All right.
Sawyer Eddy, longtime listener, first time caller. So for our after hearing the story and focusing on it and the customer feedback, our higher purpose statement was shorter and was that the purpose of Goodman's is creating environments conducive to customer excellence, sort of just keeping it broad enough to match whether it's a hospital or a government agency being able to match excellence in that area. The roadmap was more word vomit, I guess, coming out. We also thought that the customer feedback was very important, but we thought if we could get really, I guess, kind of focused feedback for the specific tasks or furniture designs. So the employees who might be like, well, I just installed this in this way, or I just helped work on this type of chair, they could get that feedback specifically to how that specific type of chair made a difference. Whether that is just you repeating or talking to the customer directly, being able to see, hey, your chair could help reduce injury in some way or made a patient more comfortable so the recovery was sped up. Instead of just thinking a comfortable chair, they could think better, a better healing process. We also thought about talking more with the supplier, kind of getting them on board to make sure that this isn't just you trying to change things and push it down, but that your supplier also has some buy-in in this process, that they also feel this connection, which could help with that whole process go a lot more smoothly if they're also on board with you. Those were the two big ideas. We also thought it was important that the philanthropy that you were already doing, just to make sure it's still connected with this bigger purpose. So if you got furniture back and then donated it to a nonprofit or something, you could again focus on how you're improving the environment of that nonprofit or what it may be, so that the philanthropy doesn't have to just kind of be philanthropy for philanthropy, but it still fits into this big purpose of, this is what we're doing. We're trying to improve environments everywhere, so that each of these customers, whether they're a paying customer or just a beneficiary of what we're doing, can reach kind of their peak potential. We also had an idea to remove all chairs from government offices, but that was more like a side note to help with efficiency than anything else.
Thank you. There's so much I want to react to in that. That was really excellent. Your idea about donating the surplus furniture to nonprofits. Bing. That was awesome. That's what we do. Great work. Who gets credit for that? Red Jacket? Oh, we're sharing credit. All right. Nice work. Regarding the purpose, I think what both tables missed actually so far is you're forgetting my purpose, forgetting what animates me, what drives me, and how important it was that that this is something I can align with and get excited about. And I have no particular skills in office furniture. I can't design it. I can't, not really good at selling it. I can't install it. There's nothing really I'm good at here, right? I can pick out the flaws. I can tell you, but so that's the one critique I'd have of those two purpose statements. Boy, I like a lot of what you said there. What else did you say? I can't remember. Yeah, that was great. That was really great. That's all I have to say about that. All right. 2 tables left. Who's gonna? Adrian? Oh, thank you.
So we basically said the same thing that those two said. We've really thought about the purpose being creating a comfortable space for people to get their job done, whatever that might be, keeping it broad. But that's kind of what we were thinking. And we talked about going out to the community, getting, the salespeople connected with the community. That's great. Selling the product, not just once. Once you sell it that one time, it's going to be reused in another way, which I think is something that could really invigorate the sales team to think about that. But we also talked a lot about the engagement and disengagement factors. So once you start defining this purpose, engagement will go up for some, but then disengagement will also go up for some too. Some people are going to say, like, I really don't care. I'm here to make money. So being able to kind of deal with that and think about, okay, well, maybe you don't align with our mission, would be something that you'd have to take into your thoughts when moving forward with that. We also talked about the concept of ikigai, which is a 4-part process, which is defining what you love, defining what the world needs, defining what you can be paid for, and defining what you're good at. So whenever you're interviewing people and talking to them, that's what you need to focus on, those 4 areas. And whatever that area is, it's kind of like a multi-Venn diagram. The middle of that is this the right person for this position? That means they are here for your specific work. So being able to do that moving forward would really push that purpose into the work and into your employees. That's it. Thanks.
I've got an interview on Monday for a senior position, and honestly, it's such a senior position that I hadn't really thought in a while about what my interview process is going to be. Can I get a copy of the Ikigai? Well done. Well done. That's awesome. Boom, here. Do you want to drop this? Take this. That was awesome. All right, I'll look it up myself. Thanks. I want to react to what you talked about. The people that aren't aligned. Am I on? Yeah. Huge problem for me because I'm dealing with people much older than I am at the time, and who had seen me grow up in the company. They saw me as a little high school punk working in the warehouse, and I didn't have the standing, other than my dad was the boss, to be able to declare a purpose. And that was such a audacious kind of thing. And the story is that I on that flight back, which I've already told you about, I wrote out this purpose statement, which you'll see in a moment, verbatim. It's still the same. And I saved it and stuck it in my documents, and didn't look at it again or show it to anybody or think about it for a full year. Mostly because of what you said. There's just people I knew they would laugh at me and all that. And our marketing director was somebody I felt was a fellow traveler on this journey. I showed it to her after a year, and she said, "Oh my goodness, that is who we are. Like, you've got to share this," and gave me that confidence and courage to be able to stand up in front of the whole company and talk about it. And as the story goes, we had a big breakfast meeting with everybody in the company at a Mexican restaurant, because it's the only place that could fit everybody in, and we served breakfast burritos. And I'm just setting the stage for you, and I'm nervous to go into all this. And I go through it. I lay it out about here's the purpose. And I could see right about where you're sitting, right a little further back, I could see two senior people, well-paid senior people, were whispering back and forth and passing notes back and forth, really. And I was very aware of that and wondered, what is on those notes? And when everybody left and the burritos were cleaned up and the chairs were put away, I went over to where they're sitting and I found that note on the floor. And I still have that note today as a inspiration. Okay, that's it. Oh, you want to know what the note said? Oh. The note said, "I wish I had worn my boots today because the bullshit is so deep in here." Right. Yeah, that took a little wind out of my sails. I guess I'll finish the story because it doesn't give it away. Oh. Yeah, I'm not giving it away. It's while we're on the topic. Okay. And so I pushed forward, though. I pushed forward and kept at it. And when the recession happened, I told you we cut the company in half. And by that time, I had a leadership team that believed in what we were talking about and was on the same page and aligned, but had a whole bunch of employees that weren't. And so when it came time, we had to make those tough decisions. It wasn't based on performance or seniority or customer relationships or anything else. It was based on, do you believe what we believe? Are you aligned? And that made it really easier to make decision. Tough to do, of course, but easier to make the decision. And that could have taken another decade to get that alignment, but we got it real quick after that. Okay. Final team.
All right, so the mission that we kind of thought about and came up with was that we wanted to help shape environments to improve lives and to empower customers to do their best work. And we had a lot of common themes with the other groups, but one thing that we really did think about was the empowerment part. Like, how can we have the employees really feel empowered themselves without just shoving a purpose and a mission down their throats, because that might cause more disengagement, just like Adrian said. So one of the ideas that we had was to start engaging in volunteer programs and to have these programs at some of our customer locations, like schools and hospitals where the furniture was located, and not really telling the employees that, like, oh, we're going to one of our customers, but to have them really realize for themselves, like, oh, look at what my product is doing for the community. So to have them kind of realize their purpose for themselves, and it might become more ingrained within themselves, and in that way become more impactful for the employees. So.
Thanks. I like that concept of empowerment. Most everybody here really focused on that employee experience, which is really interesting. And you're absolutely right about shoving it down this purpose down the throat. It didn't go quite so well. You predicted that correctly. I want to say one more thing about volunteering, which is really interesting and involves ASU. So despite the purpose that we're going to talk about in a second, we've tried to have volunteer efforts and organize people to do things collectively, and it hasn't really gone over very well. Despite the fact I think we have a lot of alignment about what the purpose is, people's personal time, for whatever reason, they're not aligned. Okay. So this has been something we've been wrestling with for a while. Now, can I tell you a quick story here? Sidebar, put that aside for a second. So the ASU Herberger School of Art and Design, they have a vision, an amazing vision, to put about 1,000 artists every year into the community, embed them in the community, in governments and hospitals and corporations and all over, and help them tackle problems inside these organizations. And the theory is, there's a couple things going on. One, artists think differently than us business makers, right? And artists approach problems differently. And really, what is art but taking a problem and approaching it and shining light on it in a different way? And so these artists, they're graduating so many, they can't possibly all get jobs as artists. And so they need to understand that they can contribute to more traditional organizations. And also the more companies and governments and all that need to understand artists are employable and valuable in helping solve problems. So this idea of this art and design course to go out in the community, place these people, embed them out there, and have them tackle a problem over the course of a semester. So Goodman's, right now, we're in the middle of it. We are the very first, the pilot study on this whole program. So they said, what kind of artist do you want? I said, I don't care, just whatever you think. So we've got two hip hop dancers, two hip hop dance majors, actually, have been embedded in our company for this whole semester. And they're taking us on this journey. And the problem I gave them was volunteerism. Like, how do we increase this? And what's super fascinating, so they've been meeting with every team, small groups. They've had about 10 meetings with our group. I've attended probably 4 of them, just kind of observing and participated in 1 or 2 of them. And our CFO came to me, who understands what the whole objective is. He's like, I don't get it. I don't get it. What are they? I can't see what are they going with this thing? And I'm like, dude, I don't call him dude, but for the purpose of the story, dude, of course you don't get it. You're a CFO. Like you're a linear guy. Like that's the whole point. They're coming at it from a different perspective. And so there's a culminating event coming up in late March where I don't really know what's going to happen, but something cool is going to happen coming up soon. So shout out to ASU Herberger School. It's pretty damn cool. Okay. No, I'm still me. So it's time to, okay. The reveal. So, yeah, like I said, I think what you missed is, I should say this. A lot of what you said are almost verbatim kind of the purpose statements, taglines, really, I'd say more than purpose statements of other companies in our industry around the country. There's a lot of the words that you had in there that I see often used. And I'm trying to elevate. Now your slide, Brian, you talked about aim high, but not too high, I think something like that. And I remember wrestling with that on that plane flight about it's got to be above the literal work we do and something higher than that. And my interest in making change and making an impact on a big scale and what's the common thread between what all these customers are saying and what the employees are saying, what they like. And so I wrote this whole thing out. This whole thing is coming up next is it's on the wall, of course, because that's what you got to do. But it's the first sentence, just the first sentence is really the shorthand of how we talk about the purpose. And we talk about this a lot. I'll go into how we rolled it out in a moment. But so don't like relax that it's such a long, that's not what you're supposed to do. But it's all meaningful. And I'm going to read it because I think it creates more drama. At Goodman's, we will change our community. We will create a city of world-class employers who attract top talent from across the country. We will encourage energetic entrepreneurs to take risks in search of the newest new thing. We will teach executives to harness the power of design to transform their companies into vibrant enterprises of engaged workers. Engaged workers. We will leverage design to inspire better learning outcomes for students. We will build healthcare environments that promote healing. We will create value for stockholders, taxpayers, students, and patients by decreasing expenses in our corporation, government agencies, schools, and hospitals. We will build a community that takes care of its sick, supports its weak, inspires its artists, protects its resources, and promotes faith for its citizenry. At Goodman's, we will change our community, and we will do it by establishing ourselves as an example with style, humor, compassion, integrity, and respect. So that's what it is, which you were close. If you had another 2 minutes, probably would have. So, okay, so imagine me reading that to that room full of people eating breakfast burritos and how that went over, and seeing this, like, you can imagine, right? Like, this was uncomfortable to say the least. But I realized it was out there. So there was a sense from people that this is going to pass. I don't know what this is, but like, let's just get back to the business of selling conference tables and keep pushing forward. And I kept what you said in the field guide there. I kept rewarding people based on who was aligned with it and representing it. Every time I'd praise somebody, it was aligned with what you're doing is making an impact in communities, which is why I often took examples about the receptionist, a non-customer facing person who said that, who talked about that, but that was great. A non-customer facing person, or the accounts receivable guy. Can you imagine somebody who's accounts payable? Accounts receivable actually deals with customers. Accounts payable is not even, doesn't even know the names of the customers. The guy in the warehouse dock who's receiving the furniture that goes out. I took all these individual jobs and talked to them, drew that line for them about how what you do is making an impact in the community, to the point where I could say every single person here who has anything to do that touches a healthcare project, for example, is helping patients to heal. You can be proud of that, whether it's typing up the order to put it in the system and transmitting it, whether it's collecting the money from the customer, whether it's paying the money to the suppliers, whether it's receiving on the truck, or whether it's taking the phone call when they first called in to make the appointment. And that was really important to me, to keep drawing the lines. I went on a campaign to write handwritten letters to employees, rather, who had gotten some praise. Handwritten letters, probably 5 per week or so. And in every one of them, I would draw that line to what you did and how it connects to our higher purpose. And I would send them home, to their homes, right? Handwritten letters sent to their homes. And my point there was, one, I wanted to get the families to have pride in the employee, and I wanted the families to understand there's a higher purpose that's going on. And that campaign has been fantastic and continues to this day. Whichever team said it, yep, we brought, I think you said it, we brought a middle management structure in. It added a lot of cost to the company, significantly impacted our cost structure, but and spent a lot of money developing their talent and being able to make sure they understood how to help develop the careers of their employees, to give them a voice. That was immensely disruptive. This was a sales-driven culture, if there ever was one, right? These big superstar salespeople who are accustomed to just telling their teams, like, this, you do this, and, don't give me any flack, not in so many words. And that's very emasculating for the support team. And to now suddenly they had a voice to be able to say, that's not okay with me, right? Like, I deserve more respect than that. And so now we have got to go back to these sales superstars and say, you can't do that. And that created a whole bunch of consternation. And so it's just keep reinforcing, and then comes the recession, and which, again, painful as heck, but we come out of it with a way more aligned organization. Now what do I do? Well, there's another slide. Someone else is supposed to talk about it. It ain't me. Okay. That's the end. Yeah. Jake is not happy with me, I should add. Tell him why you're not happy with me.
So this character, last night, sent an email saying, slide decks look great. I'll see you tomorrow at 9:30. Which I think, because all you guys are here, realize that it did not start at 9:30. It started at 8. So
it's like 10 o'clock at night.
10 o'clock at night, I try to make a phone call. Someone doesn't answer. I text, someone doesn't respond. I email, doesn't respond. And then I get a reply. I'm not going to use the words that you say, but I'm just kidding with you. Yeah. But to my defense, he is quite old. So I don't know if it's, you can't, if you assume, you make what? Oh, exactly. All right, but hey, everyone, round of applause for Adam. And round of applause to the opening act, Brian Mohr. So I again appreciate everyone's attendance here. I know it is Friday, it's the morning, but it really does mean something to all of us in the leadership position that you guys are interested in this. And I think this event went well, but in the end, it doesn't matter what I think. I hope that you guys have all got value. This is the framework we plan to do for all future workshop events going forward, is to, again, get these real life business executives to tell their story and allow you guys to sit in their chair and in their shoes and make a decision based on these tenets. So if you enjoyed this, we have a number of things. Also, real quickly, so we covered very superficially the processing for developing a higher purpose. If you are interested in a much deeper dive, these are pretty much the two books that all the information was pulled from. You have the original Conscious Capitalism book, co-written by John Mackey and Raj Sisodia. And then you also have the Conscious Capitalism Field Guide, which is more of how the tenets are actually applied in the real world. So all the questions you guys see in there came from the Field Guide. So I encourage you, we have a very small student library. So if you are interested, we can lend out the Field Guide to you guys to kind of explore. Also, I want to promote our next upcoming workshop. We will be delving into the tenet of stakeholders, and we'll be presented with a problem set by Matt Altman, CEO and co-founder of Sportique Apparel. So it's going to be a really interesting experience and a real interesting problem set for us to engage on. That will be on the 29th of March. Also, I'd like to officially announce the opening of our registration for the inaugural Conscious Capitalism Case Competition, where we are partnering with Televerde. If you guys don't know who Televerde is, they are the epitome, the incarnate of the concept of higher purpose. They're a business-to-business marketing firm that employs over 700 incarcerated women in Indiana and here in the Glendale area, providing them education and opportunity to make a significant pivot in life, to honestly be selling high-end technology to CTOs and other technology executives in large tech companies. It's amazing things they're doing. For registration opens today. It will close on the 18th. Teams are made up of 3 to 4 personnel or students. It's open to all graduate students in the state of Arizona. So we are reaching out to Eller. We're reaching out to Frankie. I think it's Frankie. And we're also reaching out to GCU to get participation in this event. And then finally, if you are not already a member, and you are interested in what we have presented, and also the array of benefits that we can offer, I highly encourage you to get onto OrgSync and to sign up for Conscious Capitalism. We will be raffling off somewhere between 2 to 5 tickets to the annual conference that will be actually here in Chandler from the 23rd to the 25th of April. So it's going to be only open to members of the organization. So please go in and sign up. But other than that, thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much to Avnet for allowing this thing to happen. And again, thanks to Adam and Brian, and I hope you guys all enjoy your spring break. Oh, and please eat more food.